Sensationally silver, because you are.
Welcome, everyone, to Sensationally Silver, A State of Mind, conversations with extraordinary, ordinary persons of age, people who are going to bring you information, inspiration, and validation. Join us. Hi, everyone, and welcome to Sensationally Silver, A State of Mind, conversations with extraordinary, ordinary persons of age. My guest today is Mary Ann Thompson, and she's an extraordinary person who is coping with a lot and who does some things that are quite remarkable. They certainly are to me. I want to say just at the beginning of this podcast that I don't ever want to make it a sort of a competition about best worst. Who's got the saddest story or who's coping with the most or whatever. That's not the point. By the time we get to this age, whatever age we are over 60, we've been through some things. We've had some wonderful successes and some victories. We've had grief. We've had loss. We've endured some things. And all of us have a story to tell. And that's really what this podcast is about. So welcome, Mary Ann. Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you for having me. I'm so excited. I'm very excited.
Well, good, because the first question is, how old are you, Mary Ann?
I am 69 years old.
69. Nobody looks their age anymore. When I think of what my grandmother looked like at 69, I mean, in today's looks, she'd be like 99. It's amazing. I don't know if it's hormones or vitamins or exercise, nutrition.
Filler and Botox.
Yeah. We have a lot more going for us than we used to. It shows you look terrific.
Thank you.
So I'm going to ask you some questions about being a person of age, Mary Ann. What's the most challenging thing for you about being the age you are today?
I would probably have to say that I get tired at the end of the day sooner than I used to. I'm probably slightly more nervous than I used to be. I get a little more nervous. I've always been very, very high strung, tons of energy. And I'd say that when I get frustrated, being my age, I snap really quickly and I go right to fear. But then that fear, I've learned how to cope with it. But it's taken me a long time to not be in, fight or flight status, which is a large way that I've lived a lot of my life. I'm kind of a jumper inner type person because when I get pushed, I just jump right in.
Okay. Makes a lot of sense. What is the most rewarding part of being the person of age that you are today?
That I'm comfortable. I'm comfortable in my own skin. I'm comfortable with what my life has evolved into. I'm comfortable with my looks. I'm comfortable with what I know. I'm not jealous anymore. When I was younger, I'd be so jealous of things or other people or women that were prettier, smarter, richer. And I'm comfortable. I'm truly comfortable in my own skin. And that's taken me a long time.
Mary Ann, I remember running into a friend of my daughter's. They grew up together. And at this point in her life, she was about 25, I think. I saw her in a store downtown and we were chatting. And she said, there isn't enough money in the whole world to make it worth going back to being 14 again. And when we think about 14, that's probably the best we're ever going to look. I mean, the skin's tight, the body's so healthy and ready to go. And we are so miserable because of that inner turmoil, that self-consciousness, that comparing, and that does fade with age. What a gift of aging that is, just to be more comfortable in our own skin. And the thing I always say is maybe it's because the skin's looser,
It fits better. It doesn't fit as tight. You're right.
You're right. Okay. Mary Ann, have you ever lied about your age?
You know what? I actually will say I'm a little bit older. I would go, I've jumped right into telling people I'm 70 or 70, and because, or ever since I've been 67, 68, I say, you know what, I'm practically 70, have my turn signals on for 70. And, that way I get the compliments. Somebody will go, oh, you look really good for 70. And so I started thinking that, well, if I lie up my whole life, I'll always get complimented. So that's probably just a selfish way of doing it.
I do sort of the same thing. Yeah, I I start getting ready for the next age. Like I say, I'm going to be 80 because I want to gear up for that. I don't want it to jump at me,
Yeah.
surprise me. And I remember my grandmother, when she got really old, she would add quite a few years on because she was getting credit for being even older than she was. The time I lied about my age was when I was in my teens. I always made myself older. I'd meet some boys.
I did too. Yeah. So I could drink.
Yeah, our age. Funny concept. Yeah. Okay. Um, Tell me, Mary Ann, about an epiphany in your life, something that changed the way you feel about you, about the world, whatever.
I thought about this because you did give me forewarning that this was a question you were going to ask me. And I thought about it. I thought, when have I really ever had like a light bulb go off? But you know what it was actually the worst day of my life. I worked at an automobile dealership for 21 years, and I had been there about 7, 8 years, and I was a manager, and I had a lot of response. Car dealerships, you work 7 days a week, you work every holiday, there's always a sell-off. And so I was working really hard, and my husband, who had lost his son to a drug overdose, he held it in for his grief in for a year, I would say. And then he imploded from the inside out, and he was in the hospital in a coma he'd been in a coma for 3 weeks. And my son, I have a son with special needs who lost oxygen at birth, and he was at the height of his insanity, and he was in a mental institution here in San Diego, and they had just given him shock treatment that day. And that I had the epiphany. My son had shock treatment for the first time, electric shock treatment. My husband came out of the coma that he had been in for 3 weeks. I would go every night after work and go down to the hospital to be with my husband, to sit with him. And he came out of the coma that night, and he demanded clean pajamas. He wanted clean pajamas right away for whatever reason. So I'm on my way home from the hospital in the car, and I'm internalizing what happened with my husband and my son that day. And I got a phone call that my dad had just died. And I just am driving down the freeway, and I looked up at the sky. I was in my husband's car. He had a really hot car. And I'm in my husband's car with the sunroof. And I looked up and I went, what the hell, God? What the hell? And I thought, if I can and I started laughing, and I thought, if I can deal with this and find humor in this, and just, not let it tear me apart or fall apart, I thought, I'm going to have other horrible days like this. It's just going to happen. Like you shared before we started talking, things are going to happen to all of us that are difficult. But, if I can get through that day, that's probably been the worst day of my life. There's others that are close, but that was the worst. I can deal with this. I can take what God's given me and, roll with the punches and laugh along with him. But, that was my epiphany, is that I'll take it.
And I think that's one of the things that age does for us is it it makes us realize, because we go through these things, that we're not a victim, we're a survivor. And that's to our credit. So experience. Yeah.
Yeah, that things are happening, but not happening to me. Does that make sense?
Say more about that, Mary Ann, because I think that's worth talking about.
Well, I used to always feel victimized when I was younger. How could this happen? My son's mentally ill. Why me? What did I do? That kind of situation. And once I got past that and realized that I'm not identified as the mother of a special needs son. I'm not identified as, the wife of somebody that was hospitalized for a year. I'm me. And, I'm going to be able to get through what I'm getting through with the help of others, and so then I started seeing that things weren't so personal, that, other people have to have their path in their life, and I'm just part of it. Kind of like I have a girlfriend that always told me, if you could be in a storm and be the center of it and not have the storm affect you, let the storm go around you.
Mm. A friend of mine, he owns a restaurant. He and his family own a restaurant in Santa Barbara. And we had a terrible fire and floods afterward a few years ago. And I had heard that his house slipped off the cliff it was on. And not only did he lose his house, but the cliff disappeared. So he didn't even have a place to rebuild the house. And I hadn't seen him since that had happened. And I was asking him about it. I didn't know that his partner had died in that event. And I felt so terrible having brought that up. And he said such a lovely thing. He said, it's really good for me to be able to talk about it. When it happened, I was saying to myself, why did this happen to me? Why did this have to happen to me? And he said, suddenly I realized, why not? These things happen to people, and this has happened to me. And that whole perspective shifted for him. And he was able to talk. I mean, we had a lovely conversation, and I didn't come away from it feeling so guilty that I stirred up this pain, but actually thankful that we'd been able to talk about this incredibly difficult thing, and that he was grateful to me. So it's all perspective, isn't it?
It certainly is. Yes, definitely.
Yeah. We change the events that we go through by the way that we look at them. And when we can experience them becoming our experience, strength, and hope, and something that we can offer to others, that's the gift. That's the spiritual alchemy of experience in my
Right.
way.
And, I think back to Robin, to when I was married before. I was married for 18 years, and he's the father of my two children. And he fell off of a roof in front of us one afternoon and almost lost his foot off of his leg. And ever since after that, it did something to his psyche, and he stopped working, he stopped leaving the house, he stopped contributing to life at all in any way, especially financially. And I had to leave. I had to finally leave him and to stir him up and see if that got anything out of him. And I got a job and supported the kids on my own. And if that hadn't happened, if I hadn't had to leave and do life all by myself, I wouldn't have learned to use computers, because a lot of women my age suffer from the inability to be technically savvy. And I actually, jumped into the experience about 30 years ago of I didn't even know how to turn on a computer when I got my job. I lied on my resume. I lied on my interview and said that I knew Excel and I knew PowerPoint and I knew all this, which equated to I had signed up for classes. But I sure learned quickly. I got the job. I pretended like I knew what I was doing, and I took classes at night. And, I'm quite, I ended up picking out the computer systems we'd have for the sales to keep our customers and our customer retention and the type of cars we had, amount of cars we had. So I ended up helping develop and pick out systems. Whereas a lot of my girlfriends that didn't have a divorce and a tragic situation like that, it wasn't well, an eventful situation like that, they still don't know a lot about computers. And we live in a technological world where, we need, it happens so quickly. It happens so quickly that I'm glad I know some of it. And that's really, so I try looking at the different situations in my life and taking the gifts out of them.
Yeah, I really I appreciate that point of view so much. I know my own book that did so well and still is doing well all over the world, Women Who Love Too Much. It came from the worst part, the worst time of my life, the most difficult, terrible, terrible time to live through. And yet the gift, I mean, that book has been such an offering. And I'm so proud of it and so grateful to have been able to write it and give that to other people who needed it. So, yeah, those.
Think of all the people you've helped.
Well, that's true for all of us. Through whatever we go through, then we turn around and we can offer that to somebody else. And that is, again, that spiritual alchemy that takes what we would never say yes to. Oh, no, thank you. No, thank you for the husband falling off. No, thank you for the husband in a coma and the son with the problem. No, no, no. And yet they are gifts to us that we would have refused if we'd had the option. But with perspective, with time, with a spiritual life, I think, really, because I know that's important for me. Otherwise, I don't think I could have that. I saw myself as such a victim in my life. Oh my God, drowning in self-pity for so long until that spiritual awakening happened and I got a different perspective. So gifts, I've heard people say that the worst things that happened to them were the biggest gifts. And I would absolutely agree with that in my own life. So, Mary Ann, you talked about jumping in. You jump in. The reason that I asked you to be my guest is because I know you jump into the ocean every day, all the time.
Oh, I love it.
Yeah, well, obviously you must. So, talk about how that came to be and what that does for you in life.
I guess my first memory of life was when I was 2. My dad had polio, and his only way he could play with us was to swim. So I remember being thrown in a big community pool at 2 years old and just told, get to the edge, just get out. You'd find your way to the steps. And I remember that event, and I always loved the water, always. And I swam in, I went to a Catholic girls' school and there was a pool there. I had that luxury. And I swam when I was young, and I swam, I surfed, and I love the ocean. So I was always in the ocean. I went to UCSD here in San Diego, which overlooks Torrey Pines and the La Jolla shores there. And I would ride my bike down there on my break and go swimming or go surfing or whatever I could do to play in the water. And when my whole life, I centered my day around swimming. I swim every single day. And what I do, either in a pool or the ocean. And what I would do with work was I would get up at 4:30 so that I could swim at the club that I swim in and then go right to work. So I've always incorporated my life into my swimming, and I love it. I've never had a bad swim. I've never not enjoyed it. And so about 2014 or 2015, I decided, I had a girlfriend that, I kept saying, come to the club and swim with me. And she's like, come to the ocean and swim with me. So I did. She finally talked me into it. And it was like, that was it. We went swimming out. We swim in La Jolla, and we swim a couple miles out. And we got to they have buoys out there during certain times of the year. And we were out there and a seal popped up. And I just thought that was the best thing that ever happened to me. This big stinky animal with fish breath. And, we see all sorts of fish and turtles and sharks and wonderful things. So I started swimming in the ocean with them. And I decided that I needed like a little more of a challenge. I wanted to do something. So I flew up, and I think it was 2016, or 2015, I flew up to San Francisco with my husband and my daughter, and I did an Alcatraz swim where you go up to San Francisco and they take you out in a boat, drop you off at the prison, and you swim back. And it was a thrill like I've never known. It was such a high, and I was wearing a wetsuit because San Francisco is super, super cold. And I did that every year for a couple of years. And it was like my event because it's right around my birthday. So each year I would go do it. And then one year, my husband always said, you can do it, but you can't do it without a wetsuit. So one year I snuck out of the hotel before he got up, went to the swim because they would always come to the finish line and watch me come in, and my husband and daughter or whoever came with us. And I went without a wetsuit, and that was so cool. I jumped off the boat, the water was 56 degrees, and I swam. And it's not that it's such a long distance, it's more that there are terrible, terrible currents that go each way. So it's something that I need, Robin. I need it to deal with life. It's like a physical Valium for me. It's so calming and it's so wonderful. And everybody, I want everybody to feel that kind of passion that I have. I have such a passion for swimming. It's better to me. I'd rather be in a bathing suit, in a locker room or at the beach than I would, be in a fur coat, or, that's not acceptable anymore, but, better than cashmere. I would rather be in my swimming suit. And then after that, I decided that I needed another challenge. So I flew to New York last year and by myself, stayed in a hotel, and then there was a swim there with 48 other people, and we swam around the Statue of Liberty together. And that was really fun. A lot of people didn't make it. That was a hard, hard swim, only because there were four currents going all different ways. And at one point I was swimming in place, which is really tiring. And they guided me. There was a guy on a surfboard that came back around and told me to, swim left and you'll get out of the currents. So I did that, and I did that swim. And then, Robin, I don't know if you knew, but my husband has recently been diagnosed with Alzheimer's. And because I'm kind of sad about that, it's like the loss. We were going to retire together and travel, the United States, see all the things I've never seen, but he can't. So I have a goal set of a fantasy swim that I want to do this year or 2025. So I'm excited about that.
And what is it? What is this fantasy swim? Or do you not want to talk about it?
No, I do. It's exciting. I would want anybody. You swim between continents, and you go to Istanbul and you swim between continents. It's called the Bosphorus Strait, and I'm not physically trained to swim a long, long distance. I can only do maybe 2 or 3 miles, but this is 4.5. So I've started training like I'm going to get accepted for the swim. Every year, once a year, they close the shipping channels in Istanbul between Asia and Europe so that people can do this famous swim. So there's 1,500 people that get accepted. So I've been training, I'm even doing weight training, and I'm getting different exercises off the internet for endurance and building up muscle, and so that I can swim the 4 miles. And that's my fantasy, is to be able to go to Istanbul and swim between Europe and Asia. It's the only swim in the world that you can do that.
Wow. I have a feeling it's not a fantasy. It's going to happen. I would bet on you, Mary Ann.
I hope so. I hope so. But it helps me deal with my life right now. With my daughter suffering physical trauma, and my son, living with my son, and now with my husband with Alzheimer's. It gives me a happy place to go. I think everyone in the world. That's what, if I could give anything to everybody, I would give everybody in the world the way I feel when I swim. I don't care what it is. If it's eating something wonderful, if it's playing tennis, if it's reading a good book, I want everybody to have that joy I feel every single day.
That's such a beautiful message, Mary Ann, that when we have challenges, especially daily challenges that can wear us down, wear us really down, we have to take care of ourselves. There used to be a store around this area. It was called Corb's, and they had a saying. They said, "You can't do business from an empty wagon." And as a therapist, I used to say that to my clients all the time. You can't do business from an empty wagon. You have got to fill yourself up in order to be present for yourself and for anybody else. The kind of person I am, we tend to take care of everybody else first. We're way down at the bottom of the list if we're even on it at all. And that has to change. For us to be effective in life, we have to be at the top of the list so that we do business from a full wagon. We have something to offer. And that's what I'm hearing you talk about, that you know how to fill yourself up with this practice that gives you so much pleasure, so much joy, probably creates all kinds of good chemicals in your brain. And then you can live your life and not feel like you're a victim, feel like you're downtrodden, get lost in that self-pity, which is so easy for all of us. And I think it gets more tempting as we get older to talk about the aches and the pains and the things we can't do anymore. And you are a gorgeous example of someone who's maximizing what they have going for them and getting the most out of life in spite of some pretty daunting challenges. So I congratulate you. And you are doing exactly what I wanted you to do, Mary Ann. I wanted you to inspire the people who come to this podcast, because that's what we're in the business of with this podcast. We want to inspire and inform and validate persons of age. So that's what you've done. And thank you. I think I'm thanking you on behalf of anybody who's in the audience today. I know I am.
I think we've all been given a gift. Yeah, we've all been given a gift, and we just need to nurture it. Everybody, you have the gift of writing and helping people. It's just take your gift and run with it.
That's it exactly. We all have a gift, and we're all who we're meant to be. I think sometimes we can get lost in thinking we should be this other person, this other whatever ideal or something. And we're our own unique, special creation. And that's what we've got to celebrate. That's what we've got to value and honor and just make the most of. So let me ask you a couple more questions. What are you looking forward to next? It sounds like this swim is the big deal. Yeah.
Definitely. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's it.
Okay.
I'm so excited.
Okay. Yeah. It sounds exciting. You're talking to somebody who cannot put her face in the water in the bathtub. I mean, I have such a thing about water. I used to body surf. I don't know where it went, but I have almost a phobia about water these days. And so that's not going to be my source of joy. But I have horses, and just looking at them, I can't do a lot with them now because of an autoimmune thing I have. But I would rather look at a horse than the greatest art in the world. That's the way I'm made. They make me smile. And my little guy he's naughty. He's just a squirt. He's like a naughty 10-year-old boy. And he makes me laugh all the time. So cute. So that's
I love that. Well, my girlfriends that don't swim will ask me, "Are you afraid of getting bitten by a shark?" Because a lot of people down here there's two places down here where people have recently been killed. And one of the girls I swim with at the pool was the one that got bitten by the shark last summer. And she's got a big scar on her leg. And I always look at them and I say, I have a better chance of you running over me in the parking lot when we leave here. And what a cool story for my grandkids. What happened to grandma? She got eaten by a shark. Oh, you're kidding. I mean, what a great story.
Yeah.
And what a
What a
quick way
great way
to
to
go.
go.
Yeah, what a quick
We
way to
love.
go.
Yeah. I do not know this woman personally, but I know someone who is good friends with her. And she was a rider. She rode all the time, and she would ride in a fur coat and diamonds on her quarter horse. That's what she did. And she was still doing it in her 80s. And she was out with a group of women. They always rode together in a certain occasion, the fur coat, the diamonds on the quarter horse. And she dropped dead in the saddle. She had a heart attack. That was the end. And this woman was telling me the story, like, wasn't that sad? And I said, that is the best way to go I've ever heard of. My accountant, who was the closest thing I ever had to a father, he loved to play golf. And he came apart on the golf course in Palm Springs. The second round he was doing in 100 plus temperature. But that's what he loved. What a wonderful way to go. So if the fear doesn't get in your way, yeah, yeah, that's a nice exit. And it does make a good story. It makes a terrific story. So I think you've already covered this, but I'm going to ask you again as we close today, Mary Ann. What would you say? What's your message for all those persons of age who are out there, who are listening to you and watching you and thinking, wow, what do you want to say?
If there's something you want to do, jump in. Just try it. You're not gonna, I'm never gonna, well, I don't want to say never, but I'm not going to swim the English Channel, but I sure am maybe going to swim between continents. So just, there's something you're thinking of doing, just try it. You don't have to be great at it or good at it even, but just try it. And it might turn into something that you really, really enjoy doing, that gives you pleasure and passion and helps you just deal with all the other things that we deal with in life that aren't so great.
Yeah. Yeah. Jump in. I like that. Jump in. Mary Ann, thank you so much for being my guest today.
Oh, thank you. You made me feel very special. You really did.
Well, you are special.
Thank you for
You're
that.
amazing.
Thank
And
you for
thank you,
that.
all of you who are watching and listening, for joining us today. We'll see you again next time. Bye. Sensationally Silver, A State of Mind, is sponsored by Sensationally Silver, a complete hair care product line created especially for people with hair like ours, naturally gray and white hair. Sensationally Silver products can be found exclusively at sensationallysilver.com.
Sensationally silver, because you are.